tears in my eyes, and I was like, wait, what, Dad? And he says, yeah, she had a vet's deal with dogs. And I was like, but Dad, I want to be a vet. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, can I specialise in like not dogs? And he was like, I don't think it works like that. I don't think you get many at your practice. So I realised that crying at the bars of a Bichon Frise who's 10 miles away is actually inappropriate for someone who wants to be a vet. So thanks to Weakest Link. We also had the Christmas lights go on this week. Y'all 7. And the provost, the inspiring provost, he said he thought the tree leaned a bit. And that's worth writing an article on. No, they did. And all I could think was, well, maybe next year it won't only lean, it'll fall over on top of them, and maybe then we'll have an interesting ceremony. There being no further business needed.
Are there any objections to me signing these minutes that share an accurate record of the last part of business meeting? There being none, I shall duly sign. Mr. Treasurer, are there any fines?
There are no fines.
Mr. Secretary, are there any reports to be read?
There are no reports to be read.
Mr. Secretary, are there any motions on notice?
There are no motions on notice.
Mr. Secretary, are there any motions not on notice?
There are no motions not on notice.
This brings us on to general business of the Society. Are there any motions to be raised in general business? So there being no further business, our Secretary Mike is going to retire and return shortly with our guests of the venue.
Beyonce do? Like, for example, when my housemate passive-aggressively leaves the bin bag outside my room, and I look and I think, I do have a bit of time, but what would Beyonce do? And then I look at the clock and I say, it's 7 o'clock and this whole dinner starts at 7. Well, I haven't done the eyebrows in yet, so what would Beyonce do? And finally, when I think about listening to a man, I just wonder, what would Beyonce do? But no, I bet you're all wondering what a Maynooth student is actually doing here this week. And this is Daffy, or as he once called himself, Maximus the Reckless. And I was drawn to something on Twitter, not by myself. My stalking skills are not up to scratch at all. Niamh kindly pointed this out to me. But Maximus the Reckless, one time, who has never met Niamh, tweeted her saying, "Who are you, and why are your eyes so amazing? These are the questions that keep me up at night." I'm sorry, but I don't really know if that was a joke or if he really genuinely intended for her in 140 characters or less to describe her entire genetic makeup. I don't really know. He also then followed that up with a reply saying, "I'm not hitting on you, I'm just being random and honest." And if that is random and honest, maybe tonight we'll give dishonest and predictable go and see how that goes. There be no further business to be finished.
Are there any objections to the assigned these minutes of true and accurate record of the last public business meeting? There being none, I shall duly sign. So welcome everyone again to TCDPhil, where the motion before the House is this House would hail Queen May. Just go through the standing order for tonight's debate. So speeches are 7 minutes for all of our student speakers. The first and last minute of each speech is in what's called protected time, which means that no one is able to offer the speaker most information between the 2nd and 6th minute. You are free to do so. We encourage general audience participation, so if you hear something that you like, shout "hear, hear," and if you hear something you dislike, shout "shame." Just go through the standing, just go through the wording. Just go through the speaking order for the debate. So if you look at the orchard trends sheet, which you should also fill out for all the speakers for tonight, that goes towards the gold medal of Archer at the end of the year for best student speaker. There's just a slight change to the order that's on the Archer return sheets. So Niamh Rebay is now speaking first, and then Daffy second, and Niamh third. So first is Niamh Rebay, second is Daffy Arupa, third is Niamh Emerson, and fourth is Anna Nichols. And then on the opposition bench we have Niamh Herbert, Lisa Nally, Shane Keneally, and Sheila Nunn. So without any further ado, I'll call on our first speaker, Niamh Rebay, to open up the debate.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So all of the speakers had kind of a group chat going, and we were like, is this meant to be a comedy debate or is this meant to be a serious debate? And we all had very different opinions about whether it was meant to be a comedy debate or a serious debate. Since I am now first, I'm just going to get the serious theory out of the way, because I think we all agree that proposition wins just inherently, and then a comedy debate can ensue about how ridiculous this motion is in the first place. So I'm going to be speaking about 2 points today, which are race and feminism, and as a business student, I also have a point called business, but I don't know, I'll just see how the time goes, and I'm kind of afraid that my business point will undermine the race and the feminism points, but we'll see how it goes. But yeah, so first of all, I think I'll start with race, which is obviously as a white person, I can't pretend to know a huge amount about, but I think that that's something that Beyonce does for a lot of viewers. I think she's unapologetically black, which is something which is amazing in society, and she always praises her southern black roots, and in albums such as Lemonade discusses her own Negro nose, her child's afro hair, and being proud of those. And she talks about national tragedies that affect black people, like Hurricane Katrina, or police brutality, which aren't brought into the mainstream by characters who are liked. The last person who properly spoke about, well no, lots of people have spoken about it, but as opposed to maybe when Kanye West blurts it out on national TV, I think there's a lot of resonance to when Beyonce speaks to her millions of fans, or like billions of fans in reality about the situation. And in particular, something that she stands up for, like a group which is not generally stood up for, is like black women in particular. Like black women who are always like expected to be strong in the face of like this adversity, and to support like the black men in their lives and their black children who are like, you know, victims of police brutality or of like the system of injustice. And they support them silently, and they're told that they like can't be angry and that they're not allowed to be angry. And like, so one thing that she does, like the beauty of Lemonade, which I think like every woman, but like especially like black people and black women can appreciate, is that she's like unafraid to be like, again, unapologetically angry, and like as well just be like, who the fuck do you think like I am, and you need to like listen to me, right? So I think that she celebrates women in this way, in a way which isn't done, no worries, come on in, which isn't done usually in the mainstream. And you see her supporting other black women in particular as well. Like for example, like in her video, having someone like Serena Williams, who is like arguably like one of the most successful athletes of all time, but who still continues to like not be taken that seriously in the media, or like made fun of for her like strong, athletic black body, and like her supposed masculinity. And that she has her like in her music videos twerking and like not being like not being uncomfortable with who she is in any way. And I think that like for me as a white female, that it doesn't like tell me that I understand. It just gives me like a glimpse into a world that I clearly don't understand, that I'm clearly like a part of this problem and of this system. And for the first time, like through art, I'm like really like confronted with it, and told like I'm sucked into her world and told to like learn about it. But like I still don't get it all. But I think that that's like something that when more people have that appreciation, you're more likely to like have more sympathy in the world and empathy in the world. And I think that that's like a positive like societal trait. And also like talking about a song which is called Daddy Lessons, which I've had like on loop for like days. I don't know if anyone heard the new version with the Dixie Chicks. Yes. Okay. Well, it's really good if you guys haven't heard it yet. And so basically, it's on the Lemonade album. There's this one country song called Daddy Lessons, but like she re-recorded it with the Dixie Chicks, which is like an iconic like band of like country singing like women sisters in the US. And they like performed it at the Country Music Awards. And she was like, you know, her and her musicians were probably like the only like black people at the Country Music Awards, or like among the few black people at the Country Music Awards, which is ironic because like again, country music like stems from black culture like originally. But like the way that she did it, I think was like so empowering again, because like it wasn't an affront to white people. It wasn't like an affront to culture. It was like a like togetherness and a sisterhood and a really, really fun performance. And it's a really fun song. And like I had no idea I liked country music until I like heard this song first. And I think that that's something that like Beyonce does incredibly well. Cause like her songs like don't, even though she's speaking about these issues, they're not like denigrating white people. They're not that there would be any issue in my opinion with doing that. But I think that it is like a strategy which can be like particularly like effective. And then in terms of feminism, so the first time I cried listening to a song was, well, I cried last week listening to NSYNC ballads, but I think I was emotional anyway. But when I watched the Super Bowl, which is like when I was like, I don't know, what was that, 2012? The first time she did the Super Bowl, and I just thought that was the most like incredible performance that I'd ever seen in my life. And that's the thing about like Beyonce. I just think that she does something at like a level that nobody else does. Like the singing and the dancing, like it's just like such simple words. I can't even explain just like how amazing I think she is. But as well, like through, I think she's like incredibly like sexually empowered. And this is something that comes up a lot as to like, is she a real feminist, or you know, like, is that really like a good role model, or is she really like empowered to make these decisions, or is it just like for the business or like to make money? And there's like two interactions which made me like realize that it was for her, or that it at least was for women as opposed to for men, because I think that's a big thing, that like men aren't as big fans of Beyonce as women are, and I think that does speak volumes. And the first was not an interaction, but it was like when my complete boo Enrique Iglesias was like in an interview, like, and he's absolutely beautiful. I think he's also very underrated. I would also recommend people listening to his music. But yeah, so he was like in an interview, and they were asking him like shoot, shag, marry, and there was like Britney and Pink and Beyonce, and I think any woman watching that interview would be like, okay, well, like obviously you're saving Beyonce. It was like the obvious. And there was like America Ferrera there as well, who's like the actress in Ugly Betty. And she was just like, oh, come on, you're obviously saving Beyonce. And he didn't. And I was like, what? Like, what are you? Anyway, so it was just like completely crazy to me. But like that was one interaction where I was like, yeah, maybe Beyonce's sexuality like isn't doing that much for men because it's not about men. And I think that like that's also clear when you watch her performances. It's about like her having fun and her dancers being empowered and like liberated. And another one was like, yeah, I was talking to this guy over the summer and he asked me who my favorite singer was, and like I was so aware that I was going to sound like painfully basic, but I was like, you know, it's Beyonce, and he was like, yeah, you and like every other girl in the world. And I was like, yeah, that's right, like me and every other girl in the world, because I think that she does do a lot for women. And like by having like the word feminist like lit up huge on the stage like behind her, like 20 feet tall, and bringing it into the mainstream while there's like her husband on the sidelines just watching silently, like taking care of their kid. Like I think that is like an empowering thing to have like this articulate and like formidable like songwriter and performer, like representing only herself and like claiming to represent only herself. And like there's many different types of feminism, and like I think that she definitely like represents one of them. But I'm sure there's gonna be lots of other things about like Jay-Z and Lemonade. But for now, I shall wrap up. There's gonna be a comedy happening after this speech, and thanks very much for listening.
We'd like to thank Lucy for her fine words. Now we'll call on Neve to continue the case, or open the case for the opposition.
Okay, so first of all, I just want to dedicate the first part of my speech to my dear friend Mike Dolan. Mike, I know what I'm going to say within the next 5 to 7 minutes will jeopardize our friendship, but remember that you love me and just keep an open mind. So in this speech, I'll be talking about everyone's favorite thing, a very non-divisive issue, something that everyone agrees on is feminism. I'm proud to stand here and say that I'm a feminist, and I don't particularly like Beyonce. I've always been more of a Solange girl, anyway. Like, I have nothing personally against Beyonce, except for the fact that I literally believe herself and Jay-Z are like top tier members of the Illuminati, but like, I won't get into that. So, I really dislike all of this, like, yes, Queen Bee on fleek, independent woman stuff. Like, to me, Beyonce just makes feminism so redundant. Like, why is Beyonce hailed simply because she embraces these so-called masculine traits like aggressiveness? Why do we as women have to impersonate men in order to, like, validate ourselves? Why can't we embrace our stereotypically feminine traits like sensitivity, vulnerability? Yeah? Go on.
Well, I think something that a lot of people would say about Lemonade is that she certainly manages to mix the aggression that she feels from having suffered infidelity with softer moments, with moments where she feels betrayed and shows that vulnerability. And that three-dimensional portrayal of femininity is something that is feminist and is something that specifically Beyonce does.
Okay, I accept that. I will be talking about Lemonade later on and how I view that aggressiveness in a not so positive light. But anyway, so before you give out to me for not supporting feminism, I mean, I am a feminist. I do believe in feminism, but I believe in a feminism where I can be myself. I don't have to impersonate a man. Beyonce is not my feminist role model. She's not my queen. I need a feminist icon who can show me that it's okay to be a woman and not a woman with these masculine traits. That it's it's okay to cry about boys and you don't have to play the bigger person. I need someone like Kim Kardashian. If we are hailing Beyonce as our queen, doesn't that make Jay-Z the king? As I see it, there's only room for one power couple in Hollywood, and it's either Beyonce and Jay-Z or Kim and Kanye. And personally, I love Kim and Kanye. Now, despite not knowing who Kanye was before the exec from last year, my research led me to discover what an absolute icon he is. And Kim, however, I've always been a fan. I love the Kardashians and how they're famous for being dramatic and narcissistic and materialistic. Theirs is the type of life that I aspire to live. Like you saw Manus carrying me in before the debate. I aspire to be rich enough so that I can hire men to just like carry me places. But oh, where was I? Oh yeah, Beyonce, on the other hand, is just as talentless as the Kardashians. And like, yeah, okay, yeah, I said it. Okay, look, she doesn't even write her own songs. She doesn't play the music, and she doesn't choreograph her dances. Like, no. But she takes all the credit. I just think that's shameful. And so what if Kim and Kanye are getting a divorce? Apparently, yeah. So with Kanye or without, Kim is still iconic. After controversy and divorcing a man shows strength and courage. Kim should be hailed as a queen. Unlike Beyonce, who stayed with her cheating husband and then petally made a whole album about it. So if Beyonce isn't your thing, let's look at a few different feminist icons. The obvious aforementioned Kim Kardashian, a woman so unashamed of her amazing body, she shared it with the rest of the world and inspired other people to appreciate their bodies too. And then my personal favorites, like Mariah Carey or Britney Spears. And then finally, we have the 2014 Nobel Peace Prize winner, Glamour Award winner of The Girl's Hero, and an advocate for change, our very own Matthew Newding. Pictures below with the fan. I mean, I like Beyonce as much as the next drunk fresher in Palace at 1 a.m. when like Crazy in Love comes on. But like, is she really worth hailing as a queen? I don't think so, so I beg you to oppose. Thank you.
We'd like to thank Lee for his fine words, and I would like to call on Daphne to continue the case for the proposition.
Hey, right, so me and Damien came here, right, on the train, and the train was late. Sorry about being late, guys. And we said, how many absolutely offensive and terrible Trinity jokes can I squeeze into 7 minutes? And our debate. But then we got into, and you guys brought us into your chamber, and you gave us lovely water, and there was a sword, and it's all very fancy. I said, you know what, no. Trinity are a bunch of great people, and we're gonna treat them with respect. And then you got up and roasted me, so you know what? Fuck it, the gauntlets are thrown, let's begin. Okay. All right. No. But in all seriousness, though, right? It's such an honor to like be invited here to come forward and speak before the HIST. The Phil. Sorry. There's so many people with their heads up their asses. I swear I'm gonna set up Human Centipede 4, so I can't really distinguish the difference. All right. Anyways, as a person of color. Nah, can you imagine I did that? That would suck for you guys. There's no other black people here. No. I'm not gonna go that route. It's gonna be a lot more clean, a lot more fun, and a lot more, generally not terrible. I have 2 points for you guys tonight. First of all, how Beyonce transcends what it means to be a feminist, and secondly, how she's the most influential pop star in our generation. Why this is a really important thing, regardless of what you think that she believes in or any of that kind of stuff. But firstly, it's I think a couple points of rebuttal, or just 1 point of rebuttal. First of all, this idea Kanye West being an icon. If this is a debate about how great Kanye West was, I would totally be on their side of the house. I totally agree with you, Neve. Kanye West is way better than Jay-Z, and Kim and Kanye are a great couple, and they are way better than Beyonce and Jay-Z, but that's not the point, right? Because when it comes to leaders and people we like to represent us, it comes we can have multiple civil rights leaders, right? We can have multiple activists for, let's say, the independence of Ireland, but when it comes to feminism, for some strange reason, we have to pick one. So even if your point stands that Kim is better than Beyonce, who cares? Why can't we have two great feminist leaders? Why do we need to choose one? Why do we always make it that women have to be the like sole idea of perfection? If you're anything less, you're not good enough. That's insane, right? Because let's say JFK had sex with everything that moved, okay? Martin Luther King, I'm pretty sure Tino's white, and Gandhi was quite pervy. These are people who exist that we hold up as leaders. Why do our female representatives have to be perfect? That seems a little bit unfair. That seems a little bit sexist. Okay. All right. On to the point. First of all, how it transcends what to be a feminist, right? So, like, you know, what are the feminists we see in mainstream media, and what do we think of when we see, like, talk about third wave feminism? We think of, like, the Taylor Swifts, the Amber Roses, and what do these people do, okay? Someone's laughing. No, you're right, you're absolutely right. I don't fuck with Taylor Swift, that's true. But anyways, moving on. And what do they promote? They promote like open sexuality, liberation, a kind of formalistic feminism or so quote-unquote white feminism. The thing is like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong with being open about your sexuality. There's nothing wrong about being liberated. These are all good and beneficial things. What we are saying that Beyonce does is, right, she opens has the alternate perspective of this, right? She's bringing more to it. Because once again, there's more nuance to being of free and liberated women in like the 21st century society, right? It's more than just being sexually liberated, right? You can also be dominating and powerful and all these things that we say that are male traits. But the thing is like, they're not male traits. That's not a thing. If a woman just happens to be dominating, that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly acceptable. You're not like copying a man because you want to be dominating and be in control. That's just what you want to do. That's perfectly acceptable. So it's like to report what Neve said about like why is there emphasis, like why is it like, you know, why is she wrong for having these masculine traits? Like it's not about being wrong or right. It's about having a nuance, right? Because like when it comes to things of this nature, there's more complexities to it than simply being, oh, I like to be, you know, feminine, or I like to be masculine. You can be both these things, and that's what we say Beyonce does. Beyonce is the alternative to what we see in mainstream media usually as a whole right now, and that's why she's really good. Okay, so like, what does she do? Well, first of all, Beyonce exudes power and like she exudes control. And we briefly talked, and like I think we talked really briefly about, you know, about Lemonade. She stayed with her cheating husband, but like Lemonade wasn't like, oh my God, I'm so sad, look at me song. Lemonade was like, go fuck yourself, I do not need you. Like I can quote some of the lyrics here. One second, I actually looked up these lyrics. I'm gonna quote these. These guys support me. I'm gonna quote these lyrics, right? I'm the number one chick. I don't need no hype. I take some time to live my life, but don't think I'm just his little wife. I mean, come on. This is like massive fuck you to Jay-Z's, right? So Jay-Z, it's not multiple Jay-Z's, it's one Jay-Z. So Lemonade is more than simply Beyonce being like, boo-hoo, I'm so sad, look at me. No, that's a song of empowerment, right? And like, when it comes to cheating and why she stayed with him, we can go into nuances of that any other day, but I think it's more complex. Relationships are more complex than that. So moving on, right? So her being the most influential pop star, her being number one, you know, and her being a businesswoman, because to reach number one, to reach like a state where you are the best in the top of your industry, that's more than you simply be talented. That's to do with you being business. So that's like a very cool example of what she can do and what she can achieve. All right, so I'm on the wrong page. Right, yeah, but why is this really good? First of all, diversity, right? So if you're a young black woman looking up and seeing, I want to be a famous musician, I want to get into business, I want to get into media, this industry. If you see like a young black woman doing what you want to do, it makes that area more accessible for you. It makes that space and that dream more realistic and those goals more achievable for you, right? So she's inspiring young black women, and this is like a really good thing. I also talk really fast, I'm sorry about that, but I get kind of nervous. You guys have very intimidating walls in the balcony, I'm sorry. Okay, now on to my second point. How she's the most influential pop star of our generation, why this is important, okay? Yeah, I love Beyonce. I feel like this debate's almost cheating because there's way too many Beyonce fans in this room. Like, who here hates Beyonce? Probably none, by these guys. I'm gonna leave them to that. Okay, right. So, right, once again, she's not just a singer, she's a businesswoman. So it's again to top, it's a hard and difficult thing to do, especially in the music industry, where there's loads of people doing it in multiple and different ways, such as, you know, the Amber Roses and the Taylor Swift. God, I hate Taylor Swift. But anyways, besides the point. Right. Hey, all right, okay. Anyways, right. So she isn't just a puppet of a label, but she actually in herself is a business in of herself, right? So she's not being controlled and manipulated. This idea of like she doesn't write her own lyrics. First of all, she writes a good portion of them. Second of all, I mean, once you're starting off, she writes all her own lyrics for Destiny's Child and things of that nature. And third of all, who cares about writing lyrics, am I right? I mean, Shakespeare probably wasn't even Shakespeare if you think about it. Like, look into that. I'm not being a conspiracy theorist here. These things exist, all right? So why is this a good thing? Why is her being on top? And why is all these like things a good thing? First of all, like, oh wait, did I copy my points? I totally doubled down. Someone give me a POI really quickly. Anyone, please. I totally messed this up. Anyways, right. So isn't the Phil just like so bad? You know, I mean, these are the worst. And yeah, anyway. So Beyonce, back to the initial point what I was trying to say, but not so quickly. Beyonce is a good person. Like, she's not a perfect person. She doesn't need to be a perfect person, right? If that, like her very example of her being the representative at the top, that benefits women, that helps women, that like has women push to achieve their goals more. She's already done her job. She's done more than is requested. She's done more than most, right? She doesn't need to be this perfect idea. She doesn't need to be Kim Kardashian, I guess. She just needs to do more than most, and she's doing that right now as we see. So I say Beyonce's totally cool, and we should all think Beyonce's totally cool. If you don't think Beyonce's totally cool, you're totally not cool. Thank you. Beg you to prove us motion.
Very kind doctor for his fine words. May I call on our next speaker, Lisa Donnelly, to review the case for the opposition. As this is your first time speaking in the chamber for the fail, you're appointed what are called native rights, which means that now only the audience is permitted to offer you important information. You can choose to keep these rights, or you can choose to waive them and be met with rapturous around the public applause.
I will waive them. So, for those of you who know me, you're probably wondering why I'm sitting on this side of the table, because for those of you who don't, I'm going to preface this speech by saying I think Beyonce is pretty great. Her vocals are incredible. I've watched Lemonade far more times than any one person should, and I full-on cried at the Formation tour, and I'm not talking like 1 or 2 tears here. I'm talking my sister pretended she didn't know who I was for 15 minutes while I sobbed in Crow Park. But however much I respect Beyonce, I wouldn't want her to be my monarch. According to a cheeky Google search, a queen, by definition, is the female ruler of an independent state, especially one who inherits the position by right of birth. And as we all know, Google, it's never wrong. So, for the purpose of this debate, I'm assuming that the state we're referring to has the choice to put whomever they want in power. So, naturally, Beyonce's name is put into the ring. Of course it is. She's stylish, politically relevant, her Instagram is legitimately my life goals, and her ability to change key is iconic in the realms of modern music. Surely this country would suddenly become like the coolest place in the world. And okay, so yes, I admit it, they would have the fiercest currency if they just had pictures of Bey serving looks on all of their money. And things would probably be all rosy for about like a 2-week period until anarchy set in. So Beyonce doesn't fully know what it takes to be a queen. Yes, she has a huge international following, so she knows what it's like to be a global icon, but she has no idea how to represent a state. She hasn't been groomed since birth. She hasn't been groomed since birth to lead like many other monarchs, and just imagine the political chaos if we just popped her in there with minimal training. And I'm assuming here that the training would be minimal, mainly because I don't know anyone in their right mind who would want to sit down and teach Beyonce how to correctly host a state dinner when you could just sit down and have the bands with Beyonce. Now, I know that being able to quote the Princess Diaries 1 and 2 doesn't exactly make me fully qualified to give queen training, but if it was me teaching Beyonce, I would definitely spend way more time asking her about stuff like her time management skills and where in the name of God she stores all these grannies. Hold on, sit down for a second. I'm going to do a bit. Okay, just imagine the scene, right? So it's, now Your Highness Beyonce, yeah. So the Prince of Malta, he likes to have a soup spoon just slightly to the left there, yeah. And I'm really sorry, I don't normally do this, Your Highness, but would I be able to ask a question? What exactly happened in that lift? I promise, I won't tell anyone. So, but yeah, speaking of Liftgate, I think this is an excellent example of how she's inadequate to be chosen to be a monarch. This incident shows that she lacks the capacity to keep peace, which could potentially spell trouble for her nation. Like, how can you expect Beyonce to mediate an international conflict if she just stands idly by while her sister attacks her husband? It would obviously be a disaster if something similar were to happen on a political level. And not only that, but Beyonce would conveniently remain silent on whatever issue it is in question until it blows over. And this may be a kind of acceptable way to deal with your problems as a singer slash songwriter slash entrepreneur slash actress slash fashion designer slash global icon, but that's not what I'm looking for in a queen. Also, due to the nature and lifestyle of the incoming queen, the taxpayers would probably lose out. When you're Beyonce, you have teams for every part of your life so you can wake up flawless. We're talking choreographers, stylists, composers. Essentially, her daily entourage would probably be bigger than your average Phil council. So, all these people have to be looked after. And I'm assuming that some of the money needed to sustain this sort of lifestyle will be coming directly from her subjects' pockets. So at least some of the taxpayers' money will be going on things like the 15 writers she had to employ to write Hold Up. So, in addition to this, we will be choosing a queen who has frankly foolish economic policies. I mean, really, do you want to stand up and say that you have a queen who thinks Tidal is a good way to release music? Like, Tidal. Music is her area of expertise. She's been in this business for 19 years and she's choosing Tidal as like a way to release her biggest album of all time. Like, surely if her political choices were as odd as this, like, the country would be pretty screwed. And you can't deny that the album was great, but like, really, like, Tidal. Like, Tidal. Was this some sort of fuck you to Jay-Z for cheating on her, or what possessed her to think that this was a good decision? And while we're on the topic of Jay, it all seems pretty good now as regards her marriage, but we all know that there was a time when things weren't all crazy in love. Yeah, glad you got that.
Now, the part that concerns me is the way in which Beyoncé publicly addressed her marital issues. Everyone knows lines about regretting to marry Jay, and of course about infamous Becky with the good hair, and don't get me wrong, the songs are great, but you have to admit that if Beyoncé dealt with her political upsets the way she deals with her marital upsets, we'd have some pretty pissed off politicians on our hands. And this would not be good for international relations. In addition to this, the change in lifestyle would undoubtedly impact the sort of music Beyoncé will be producing. Like, imagine if we were losing out on songs about feminism and being a single lady to hear music about economic policy and whatever grudge she has and whichever world leader just got on her nerves recently. So let's just very briefly analyse our current political environment as a source of inspiration. We've got stuff like Trump, global warming, and widespread warfare. So, to be honest, if Beyoncé was a queen, we wouldn't have seen the Lemonade album, we would have seen the Grenade album. As a queen of a nation, even a pretty small one, this takes up a significant amount of time. Queens seem to have shit to do, rule countries and stuff. But if we make Beyoncé a queen, she'd have significantly less time to make music. So essentially, we'd be seeing less flawlessly choreographed dance routines, hearing less iconic key changes, and I can't imagine that we'll be seeing any surprise visual albums anytime soon. Essentially, by making her a monarch, we would be greedy, and it would actively reduce the amount of time Beyoncé would have to make music. Imagine all the time that she'd just be wasting, struggling through reams of state papers instead of just belting out absolute jammers. So, when you think about it though, the average queen isn't all that awesome, flawless, or badass anyways. Unless you're watching Game of Thrones or something. Queens don't actually tend to be that interesting. So, love her or loathe her, and who am I kidding here? Who in their right minds loathes Beyonce? But she's simply too cool to be a queen. And when you think about it, being a global icon probably has more perks to being a queen anyways. Take Queen Elizabeth, for example, the most popular monarch in the world, only 1.37 million Twitter followers. That is absolutely pathetic in comparison to Beyonce's 14.6 million. So to be honest, it looks like Beyonce probably has more influence in spite of the fact that she's not an actual monarch. So to be perfectly frank, Beyonce is simply too good at what she does to be a queen. Asking her to dedicate her time to monarch duties would be stupidly greedy, and however much I love her, I just don't think she's ready to lead a state. By making her a monarch, Bey will be singing uh-oh, uh-oh, oh no, for a very different reason. And because of this, I may bow down to her greatness as a performer, but I would not be hailing her as my queen.
So can I please support my words and now call on Eva to continue the case for the proposition?
The last 3 times I've spoken in this chamber, I've forgotten to set my timer, and that's proven bad for all of you. So anyway. Okay. So, given that I wrote my speech at the table, its aesthetic is going to be pretty much white girl wasted in the club when Drunken Love comes on. Because that's pretty much how I relate to Beyonce. I am that drunk fresher in Palace. I never built up my tolerance past 2 glasses of wine. I haven't left the library in 3 weeks. So, on that cheerful note. On a serious note, right? This year, 9, the number of Grammy nominations that Beyonce has. 450 million, her independent net worth. 17.2 million albums sold in her lifetime as a solo artist, and 17 million more on top of that as a member of Destiny's Child. I can use Google. Beyonce has managed to become one of the greatest artists of all time, one of the wealthiest people of all time, and she has done this without ever having to compromise on her beliefs, on her values, or on her artistic vision. This is so significant and so important for a number of reasons, right? But before I wanted to get into that, I want to get my teeth into the proposition side. I was going to come up with some Beyonce reference, but I actually can't think of one right now, which doesn't bode well for the rest of this, but here we go, right? In terms of Neve's conception of feminism, and in fairness, I didn't think you were actually going to take me for that POI, so I didn't have anything ready. So you scared the living Jesus out of me when you did. I think there are women who do feel alienated by Beyonce and do feel alienated by that conception of feminism, but equally there are women who aren't. But moreover, and more importantly, in her albums, in her entire body of work, she manages to show a complete and fleshed out version of what femininity can be. So when she sings on Daddy Issues about the issues that, not Daddy Issues, Jesus, sorry. Freudian slip. I I hope you all think that was scripted. So anyway, so when she sings on Daddy Lessons about the tumultuous relationship that she has with her father and that she has with men, she shows an acute vulnerability that is specific to women. But when she sings on Hold Up about the rage and aggression she feels and the abandonment that she feels at having been cheated on and having suffered infidelity, she manages to show two entirely different conceptions of womanhood that women aren't often afforded, that women aren't often allowed to do, and that is something that uniquely Beyonce does and that she uses her platform to do. Because no, Beyonce could just go around churning out the hits. Like When We Want to Smash, she just writes another one. And she could do that forever and ever, amen. But she doesn't. She uses her platform like to further her art and to further conceptions of womanhood and further conceptions of femininity. Like that is the view of Beyonce's work that we like, that we stand over and that we view as important, right? She does write her own songs, okay? She does. And even if she doesn't, neither did Elvis, right? Neither did a lot of people. Neither did Frank Sinatra. Neither did any of the musical greats that we herald in our halls of fame. And I don't see why Beyonce should be like specifically slated for this when we hold up so many other heroes who did the exact same thing. On her staying with her cheating husband. Oh, look, like women can just have sex with whoever they want. I think that's totally fine, unless they're terrible people. Don't do that. In terms of your speech, which was really funny and gas and much funnier than mine, so well done. All I've got written is "You don't know my life," and I think that's about not wanting to listen to songs about economic policy. So I think I think that tells you about where I am in my life and what I've been doing in the library, right? So anyway, moving on, right? Let's talk about black women and American capitalism, because this is something that's very important, right? So capitalism and American capitalism in specific is something that is tailor-made to exploit and to systematically oppress women, and especially women of color. American capitalism and the American dream is built off the labor of American women, the African American women, the exploitation of their bodies, like the control over them. Mark's just texted me saying, add song about economic policy to case file. It is built off the exploitation of their bodies. Women who worked in fields for nothing. Women who were sexually abused and assaulted as a means of keeping them in their place, but also furthering plantations and engendering that servitude within society. Beyonce sits atop that system that was built on the exploitation of women like her, and that was built specifically to keep women like her in their place. No matter where you sit on the political spectrum, that is a massive fuck you to that system. That is a slap in the face to everything that has tried to oppress women, and specifically African American women. And even if you don't think that capitalism is oppressive, you think she's a really good businesswoman who made a load of money, and that's really great for you too, right? She's firmly in control of that narrative. She isn't a puppet to the label, and we can see that by the way in which her music is specifically hers. There's no artist like Beyonce. There will be no artist like Beyonce ever again. Michelle and Kelly were right to step the fuck out of the way. So and let's talk about that artistry for a minute, right? Let's talk about the music. Let's talk about the visuals, right? And, segue. And sorry, I'm trying really hard, but usually when I want to be funny, right, I have to sit and plan it out strategically with a number of focus groups, like my mom and the embarrassing number of stuffed animals that I have. So it's going okay. So she's an unreal singer, and that's all I have written, because she can do those key changes, because she can belt it like Aretha, and she can I nearly said urethra. She can belt it like Aretha. She can make you feel. She can bring you to your knees. She can make you elated with literally just passing wind through her vocal cords. The immense power that is, and the immense talent that is encapsulated within Beyonce, oh my god, I love her, is something that is specific to her. It's something that you're not going to see in our generation ever again, right? But also, note that she experiments with her music. She's constantly developing as an artist. Lemonade was revolutionary for the hip-hop genre, something that is entirely dismissed, by the way, often by white music critics, as being popular music, or being something that you listen to and dance to in the club, when really it's so much more, right? She genre hops and vacillates perfectly between numerous styles of music like so effortlessly. Like Daddy Lessons, where Beyonce wrote a country song and everybody loved it and you all bought that shit, right? When Beyonce does a rock song with Jack White of the White Stripes, when Ezra Koenig from Vampire Weekend and Bon Iver have production credits, like Indie Darlings on her latest album Lemonade. Like, that's incredible. That's a level of artistry and experimentation and development that no other artist in the game has reached. Kanye tried it and failed with Pablo. Jay-Z tried it, and Jesus Christ, he failed. So really, Beyonce is a game changer. She's the only person in the game who does this and manages to do it all the time. She uses that platform to promote other artists, like Warson Shire, whose poetry was so central to Lemonade. And also, she's always been a feminist, right? If it wasn't about her paying her own bills, it was about her standing in front of lights. And if it wasn't about that, it was about her reclaiming her body on Lemonade. She uses her platform for good. She uses it to promote good values that get more people to be feminist. She uses it to promote great things. For all of those reasons, like, Beyonce is just so great. For all of those reasons, there's never going to be anyone like her again. We're so proud to hail Queen Bee.
I'm going to waive those rights. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, respected members of the proposition, and all the beautiful faces here. I am here tonight to oppose the motion that this House would hail Queen Bee. Now, I have two main points, and the first point is, and why on earth, sorry, my voice just went there. It was a rough night on the Polar Express, lads, let me tell you. Why does Beyonce deserve to be hailed above all others? Look, the motion before you today is that we'd hail Beyonce as our queen, our ruler, our empress, whatever you want to call her. I prefer Beyonce. But, you know, we gotta ask, what are we doing if we hail Beyonce? According to the dictionary that is Google search, many of you have heard about this evening, we'd be praising her enthusiastically. We'd be showing her reverence and perhaps deference. But the problem that we have as the opposition with this motion is that we don't see any evidence as to why Beyonce should be hailed or lauded above anybody else. Let's first establish her credentials. She's a professional singer, she's a songwriter, and she's an actress. And I use that term loosely. I don't know if you've seen The Pink Panther. Don't. Simply put, she's a performer. Look, arguably, she's an immensely talented performer, it's true, but the argument that she's in any way more superior or fantastic than any other artist currently, that's just subjective. You know, you just have to look to, no thank you. You just have to look to the many powerhouses of modern entertainment. There's Adele, Bruce Springsteen, Kelly Rowland, to see evidence that perhaps, no thank you. To see evidence that perhaps Beyonce is not alone on her, perhaps she's not alone on her pedestal. Let's be fair, and we'll just remind the proposition, you know, we're aware of her Grammys, her album sales, her octaves of belting, but we're still not convinced that she's the songbird of her generation, as some would say. We don't think her creative body of work sets her apart as some visionary in her field. You just have to look to some of her previous lyrics for an affirmation of this. I'll give you some to remind you. He likes to call me Peaches when we get this nasty. I sneezed on the beat and the beat got sicker, and my personal favourite, he Monica Lewinsky'd all on my gown. Yes, please.
But do you not think like taking one really specific reference from like literally one album from someone who's such an expansive body of work kind of misses the whole point of Beyonce?
Thank you very much. Well, I've actually quoted about 3 different albums there, and I have some more quotes coming up, but thank you very much. Look, she's a superb singer, she's a stellar performer, but we can't sell our allegiances and our values to the queen of the top 40. No thank you. She's not a leader of the free world, she's not a tireless humanitarian, she's an entertainment professional. And if we lose sight of that, then who can we respect? You know, the individuals who truly deserve our respect and our deference are those whose good work's done off camera. It's not done in sequence. It's done without the need to be praised or objectified. Those who need to be hailed most are those who don't want the praise, who don't seek it to validate themselves. She's not my queen, and she shouldn't be yours. Now, my next point, no thanks. Beyonce is unfit to wield the influence which she possesses. Controversial, I know. Ladies and gentlemen, Beyonce's been listed by Forbes magazine, Time magazine, everything as one of the most influential, powerful people. You know, any adjective that just, would describe power and influence, she's got it, and it's been on a tabloid headline or whatever. She's got a massive influential following group called the Beehive. Some members here, shout out if you're around. And a dedicated fan base, they follow her every move. She's immensely influential, but we're going to argue that what she is not is responsible. In recent years, she's become one of the most prominent advocates of the Black Lives Matter movement, a movement whose aims and objectives are arguably very just and reasonable, but a movement which you could argue is decentralized and has no formal hierarchy. The movement's being accused of inciting violence, rioting, and for reinforcing a racial divide that puts us as... I'll finish this point and then I'll take your... That reinforces the idea of us and them, which can just be seen by the rise of oppositional hate groups, and I mean hate groups, such as White Lives Matter. Thank you.
Okay, so, first of all, the movement had a leader was centralized, and we still get the hate from these hate groups, because obviously they're hate groups and they hate brown people. That's a fact. Secondly, right, most movements in modern day, such as feminism, don't have like one leader. That's not a thing that exists. So like, it's not automatically legitimate because it doesn't have like one head. Having one head leads to someone having too much power and they abuse that set power.
We agree that it doesn't need one particular person to be in charge and delegate responsibility, let's say. But if you actually look up the Wikipedia profile of Black Lives Matter, 3 of the people on it, their Twitter account is their main credentials for running the movement. You start to wonder that maybe it could have a more centralized form of hierarchy. No, thank you. The unstable nature of the movement can be seen in instances such as the riots in Dallas last year. And look, we're not as the opposition in any way saying that Beyonce condones this or incites this, but we think that perhaps through leveraging her fame so willingly to support the movement and donating millions of dollars in support, she might have perhaps accidentally enabled it to at times spiral out of control. We only need to look to the lyrics from her most recent album and see such things as, okay ladies, now let's get information. And that actually, when you watch it on the video version of the album, it's set to lines of women in militaristic uniforms marching. That could very easily be construed as an endorsement of such behavior. Furthermore, Beyonce is very calculated in her political motivations. She sings of female empowerment, but she doesn't attempt to defy the misogyny in the music industry. She tells the single ladies to put their hands up and then wants to be called Miss Carter. Yes?
Okay, so on Beyonce not wanting to defy the sexism in the music industry, her entire album and her entire body of work is about female independence, is about women striking out on their own. But the very fact that she's the most successful artist, or one of the most successful artists of our generation, is literal, bodied, physical defiance of the thing you think she doesn't do.
We will address that when we come to the topic of Lemonade, which has been discussed at length by everybody who has spoken tonight. So we can disregard stuff that, perhaps she succumbs to the male-dictated norms of what a female musician must wear. We're not going to argue with that. People wear what they want on stage, but Beyonce just doesn't, we think, do enough for women. She sings of girl power, and then she sidelines all the members of Destiny's Child. I mean, what did Michelle do wrong? You won't see Beyonce visiting refugee camps. You won't see her talking out about the genocide in Darfur like, let's say, Angelina Jolie does. She leverages her fame when it suits her, and there's no possibility that it can backfire. She supports Black Lives Matter, but you won't see her at a rally in downtown Missouri. She'll create an album like Lemonade, which chastises her supposedly cheating husband and gives a middle finger to infidelity and all the men who commit it. Yet then she releases it on her husband's record label. So now we have a man benefiting exponentially from an anthem of female empowerment. I just can't get over the irony of that. She has a clothing line, Ivy Carter, made for all shapes and sizes. That's perfectly great. Then she produces it for 87 cents a piece in an Indonesian sweatshop. Ladies and gentlemen, I've shown you why Beyonce Knowles is not a public figure worthy of our endorsement. She's a true example of what occurs when popularity allows an individual to become infallible. She can't wield her influence appropriately or responsibly, and she has no true desire to fight for equality or the common good, because it just doesn't satisfy her interests. I pose the question, how can you endorse a queen who's unfit to rule? Beyonce may not think that we are ready for this jelly, but she's not ready for the throne. Thank you very much. I beg you to oppose.
I'd like to thank Shane for his kind words and call on Anna Nichols to close the case for the proposition.
Right. Here we go. Okay. Chairperson, adjudicators, members of the proposition, members of the opposition, ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here today to discuss one thing and one thing only. Are we here to, like the opposition have decided to do, vilify an extremely successful woman, like basically in points that are rooted in all the kind of double standards that we see, that we place upon women and don't upon men, on a woman who's been extremely successful, who's uprooted every expectation and insisted on subjecting her to a level of scrutiny and of feasibly high standards that you probably wouldn't place on other celebrities in your analysis? Or are we here to celebrate a successful woman, what she represents, what she celebrates, and her ability to have the patriarchy and all those traditional institutions designed to suppress her and people like her on shaky ground every time some words come out of her mouth? So, before we launch into discussion, so as you probably guessed, I'm for the latter of that proposition. So before we launch into why Beyonce's celebration of women and what she makes visible in her artistry, which is what I'll be discussing for my speech, there's something I just wanted to respond to that the other side has kind of been consistently advocating in a very kind of implicit way in kind of everything that you're saying. So in terms of kind of like responding to things in a more direct way, like any good Beyonce album drop and my late entrance, if anyone saw that, it will be unexpected, yet with jaw drop, yet hopefully to jaw-dropping effect. We'll see how that goes. So we've kind of heard, there's been a lot of Googling over the other side of what is a queen? What do we mean when we think of that? But one thing that we haven't really taken a minute to consider about is what exactly we mean when we talk about actually hailing someone, because we've kind of got this side from you guys that it's this really twisted idea of kind of like worshipping someone and being like completely complicit in everything that they do, and like this idea that like once you hail someone you remove somebody's complete ability to ever view that through any sort of like objective lens. But like what we've kind of been advocating and what we ultimately see is like a more accurate representation of what that means is like when you hail somebody. So just on a side note, I actually messaged a boy I really fancy who studies history and asked him to look this up for me. Did great research, delegation. Thanks Beyonce for being my wing woman on that. If we're really talking about hailing somebody, what that like really essentially means when you get down to it is this idea of like wishing somebody the best and like wanting the best for them. And what that applies is when we want somebody to succeed, like which I think we've all ultimately agreed that we do. So like ultimately implying that we all concede in what we like mean by the word hail is that like when we want somebody to succeed, like we celebrate ultimately what they're bringing to the table, and like we're appreciative of the fact of like what they've done and the discussions that they've been able to open and the kind of platforms they've made available or utilized. So with that in mind, and with a lot of like things we've already mentioned in the prop, we've talked about diversity, we've talked about like subverting expectations for women and kind of having these like singular standout achievements, and and that's like something that we've really kind of like thrown out here. Also just going to mention, I don't know if Ludovine did, obviously like various like women who feature Lemonade and like Beyonce's all-female bands and all those kind of things, but we'll get to that. But kind of another, like, one thing that really has kind of like been really apparent is that like Beyonce, in what she does and what she embodies, this idea of celebrating like a multifaceted woman. So like what Dafe said when he says like, why do we need to have one example of a feminist? Why can't we have many? And it's what we really get to in what Beyonce does, and that like what we see like is a more full and a more founded, and essentially like because of that, because of like the like diversion of like exploration that she's willing to go, like essentially like a more authentic like embodiment of the fact that like being one thing doesn't preclude you from being something else. And like we see that, like that's why Beyonce can have, that's why it's so important that we see something like Flawless with Chimamanda, another like great woman, and Partition on the same album, and the fact that you can do that because being sexual and being very open about what you like your husband to do in bed or in a car, I too would have got the driver to roll up a partition just trying. But it doesn't preclude you. Like you can be like being a businesswoman doesn't mean you can't be an artist. Like being a queen or a political statement, like that doesn't preclude you from being like a hot mom. Like women are so conditioned to this idea that you have to be one of those things and not the other. And like I think every woman in this room can agree that like there's been some point when someone's made that comment to you, like, oh, like that was you who, like, I'm so surprised you got that grade, or like that's so weird you got that internship, or that's so weird you're into debating because you like you like makeup, or you're absolutely buzzing to do your tan on a Friday, or like you love coppers, or like any one of those things. And like the fact that like Beyonce is so visible, and the fact that like she doesn't accept that narrative, and she's so like open to being like, yeah, you know what, we are going to talk, like on one album, yeah, we are, happily I am going to talk about like my relationship issues, and I am going to talk about like sex, and I am going to talk about my sexual experiences, but I'm also going to talk about like a very real and like very pressing like issue, like cultural issue in America, and I'm happy, like, and we can roll in narratives of slavery and like systematic oppression, and we can get all those things at once, because like women do not exist in one box, and women don't exist as tropes. You don't have to be one or the other. There is room for dimensional expression of you as a person. And, you know, every time she gets up and, like, you know, has that variety in her concerts, in her performances, in what she says, she makes that more and more clear that, like, women don't have to be, like, one thing. You don't, you know, you don't have to remove your makeup, or you don't have to, like, you know, stop knowing that you love twerking in the club to, like, to still be taken seriously the next morning in your tutorial. And, like, you know, and I think when we think about the kind of platform that we have, and like what you're so used to seeing with women, when, you know, you're literally being thrown one thing and being like, okay, accept that, digest, like when the media is constantly telling you like something else and you're just being thrown one thing, being like, okay, accept that, digest that, that there's one way to be a woman and that's like all you can accept. Like when you actively see someone with that kind of prominence, like that kind of visibility, that kind of audience and following, and like notably a following that hits on so many different demographics, like we see with the Super Bowl, like the embodiment of like, you know, all that we're told is right with like the American patriarchy and like this entrenched idea of like violence and all those classic male ideals. When a woman like Beyonce gets up and it's like, okay, grand, thanks for the platform, lads. Like, you know, like number one, we're all going to look unbelievable. Number two, we're all going to get up here and make a massive statement about like probably the most, like one of the most relevant issues in American society today. And number three, we're going to have everybody remember that like they have never been moved by something before. Like that hits on so many different things that like we are told that women can't get up and display, and like that women, you know, can't get, you know, that like it's impossible for like one woman to be able to embody all those things. So like when she gets up and when she does that, and when you when you think about like the amount of different demographics that like respond to that, and like when that's, you know, the only alternative that you see in the media. So like, you know, that's why we just can't buy this idea of like, you know, did you you know, like the variety of women who feature on, you know, like Lemonade, you know, like Lemonade, when we see like women like, you know, Winnie Harlow, like Serena Williams, all these women who are, you know, traditionally like vilified by media and like told that like that you are defined by your looks and you have nothing else to offer. And like when Beyonce gets up and be like, no, you can have, you know, you can sing, you can have a business brain, you have so much more to offer than like what one side tells you. You know, like we say, like at the end of the day, like how on earth would you not want to celebrate that and like endorse that? Because at the end of the day, like kicking that idea to the curb, being like, you know, okay, I'm going to take, you know, this visual obsession we have with women on display. You know, if you all want to look at woman, here's a woman, you know, talking about so many different things and embodying so many different things. And it's saying that, and the fact that she does that on the same album, you know, on one album, the fact that people still buy that album, the fact that that album is nominated for 9 Grammys, like makes all these incredible sales and like has so much impact. And, you know, like I think the minute someone slags off Tidal or Miss Carter or like Ivy Park, is to miss the point entirely, because we don't hold up those same standards to men. We don't say those things. And, you know, like Beyonce, like as much as you want to slag her, like when you think about the amount of like repression and issues that we have when we put women into a box, when Beyonce gets up and does what she does by virtue of literally being what she is in that multifaceted embodiment, you know, like I just don't understand how you don't have something to celebrate. So with that, Merry Christmas.
Guess who's back? Back again. It's Sheila from the Minutes. Anyway, if during my speech at any point anybody wants to give a POI, it must be in the form of song, and because you have to think, what would Beyonce do? And also, just one piece of rebuttal. Niamh, did you really write every single one of those statistics and numbers while you were sitting at the table? You must have some memory. Fair play to you. Okay, so, ooh boy, you're looking like you like what you see. Won't you come over and check upon it? I'm gonna let you work upon it. Ladies, let him check upon it. Watch it while you check upon it. Dip it, pop it, twerk it, stop it. Check on me tonight. Now, I mean, I think I'm actually, bear that in mind, I think I'm actually going to be going against my entire side here, but I'm still going to be giving an op speech, so sorry lads. I could literally look at those lyrics that I just read out and say, here, you know what, I don't need any man to be checking on me. Well, like, unless I'm like vomiting in a bush, then maybe do check on me. Like, there actually might be something wrong then. But no, generally I don't need a man to check on me. But I could look in depth at some of these lyrics, or even things like, should have put a ring on it, and say, no, don't tell Beyonce, no, bad, feminist, bad. However, I don't really think that it's very beneficial to analyse art to death. Like, the more times that I analyse Waiting for Godot doesn't suddenly mean that I find it in any way compelling at all. In the same way that when I analyse the lyrics of these to try and prove that Beyonce is not a feminist, I don't suddenly not want to show off my midriff and wiggle around on the dance floor of the club when I hear this song. Like, if someone asked me, why do you think she says to the left, I'd be like, oh, I don't know, probably because they wrote them in the lyrics. Like, I just think that we should, I guess the thing I'm trying to say is that I am not going to stand here and say that we shouldn't appreciate her songs, because I appreciate them and enjoy them for what they are, and I'm not going to look in depth at her art and say why you shouldn't support Beyonce. And on a side note, any man who doesn't like a bit of Halo in his life has no room in my life. But I am going to explain to you why I don't think you necessarily need to hail a woman or any woman that is held up as a poster girl of feminism, and I'll also explain why I think it creates barriers. But first I want to run through a little brief history of why I personally can no longer hail Queen Bey. Okay, age 11. Sheila is about to lose her virginity. Frigidity, stressing that. That's literally what we called it. And she's with 3 of her closest friends on the mud hill, because if you didn't do it on the mud hill, it didn't count. And one of her other friends is the witness. Don't pretend you didn't have witnesses, you all did. And as the 3 of us lean in with our hands firmly behind our backs in case we might actually touch them, to kiss, I stop and go, oh wait, no, it's okay if we just hug instead. I have never gotten so many daggers in my life. So our witness, he decides to play a song in order to, ease the tension. And all I hear as I'm leaning in from his Sony Ericsson is, baby, I swear it's deja vu. And sorry, but thanks to Beyonce's success, I now can never feckin' forget that, because I always hear deja vu. Age 13, I go to my first ga disco, like the Culshies was, and I kiss a whopping 20 guys, and I'm on number 21, and Nana, a diva is a female version of a hustler sounds, and I realise, A, I've won the shifting competition, yeah, ow, bitch, and B, oh my God, how many illnesses am I going to have on Monday? Age 21, I get a taxi home from an unspecified ball. We all know what's coming next. And I proceed to shift my taxi driver while appropriately drunk in love sounds. And I only really hope that it won't be all night. Whoa! And I then proceed to pay my taxi fare and go home and fall asleep at my front door. So, thus concludes my kissing life as narrated by Beyonce. And a huge reason that I'm side up tonight, because if she wasn't so popular, maybe I could forget these moments. But anyway, on to a more serious topic for the last few minutes. So, I know what you're thinking, Jesus, Sheila, you had a serious thought, that must have been a long and lonely journey. But I do know, I want to talk about why I don't think we should hail one woman. Beyonce said, I don't have to prove anything to anyone, I only have to follow my heart and concentrate on what I want to say to the world. I run my world. Even Beyonce herself is asking us to please not place her on this pedestal whereby she is a poster girl and an image and the embodiment of feminism and female empowerment. She lives for herself, and when we place the burden of feminism on what seems like one person's shoulders, we leave that person exposed to negativity or debate, like what's happening here tonight. We question them, we question their motives, we can question whether they are truly feminist. And I believe that any woman who wants to can identify as a feminist. And although we may not always agree with each woman and her stance on the issue, it's not for us to discredit or question any woman's dealings with it. I also think that a huge problem still remains in society where women put other women down. And I think that we should all respect strong and how confident Beyonce is. And I would never put her down. However, that doesn't mean that I have to hail her. When we have this central image like Beyonce, we remove the ability for us to be able to decide for ourselves how we want to treat feminism, view it, experience it. Because we're looking towards this one person that, and we end up not only sometimes questioning that person, but discrediting other women who don't fit into Beyonce's style of feminism. And that's what it is, just Beyonce's style of feminism, which is in itself counterproductive. I originally thought that all these were going to be prop points, because I thought that by not hailing Beyonce, I was anti-Beyonce, but I'm not. However, it's actually totally the opposite. Instead, what I'm saying is that we can probably and should appreciate all women who are successful and identify as feminists, because we can't have too many women fighting against inequality. Once we put one person in the spotlight as a centre focus of an issue such as feminism, it causes people to slate that woman, or perhaps by analysing the lyrics to her songs, no longer appreciating her art, or attempting to emulate everything that they think think feminism is by looking at how this one person lives their life, like Beyonce, thus creating a definition of feminism that like could leave some people excluded. Like we've talked so many times about how she encourages other black women, but Chimamanda, she was only credited with being successful when her song was put into Beyonce's, when her thing was put into Beyonce's song. So we're saying that only one black woman can be successful and all the others have to be then accredited to that woman. When I say that it creates barriers, this feeds into it. I think that feminism is deeply personal. My experiences and how feminism affects me is going to be totally different than a black American woman, because that's an alien experience to me. I look at her success and her talent and her self-love, and if I have to figure out how to access that by myself. Sorry, I'm going to run a little bit over. And that does, she wants to run her own world and not everybody else's. So we shouldn't force her to hail her. We should have her as a role model, but not as our queen, because you're strong enough to decide what you are without her. Like, you can run your world and not Beyonce. And don't get me wrong, I do think that as a celebrity, she has managed to get feminism to places where it otherwise might not be heard. However, I do think that feminism, like what if people aren't all of these things, singers, famous, curvy, a wife, etc. They'll feel as though this is something that's unachievable, and I don't think that that's a positive thing. When I look to little Sheila when she was going to the Ga disco, and the type of woman and feminist I am, it's because of people like Beyonce, to Amy Schumer, Madeleine Albright, Joan Rivers, most recently Nicola Sturgeon, my mother, my grandmother, myself, and I look at younger Sheila and I think that by admiring and appreciating and learning and sometimes disagreeing with all of these women, I've become the woman and the feminist that I am today. And Sheila's feminism is not Beyonce's, and she may play a small part, but that's the key word, a small part. I made a joke in my minutes about what would Beyonce do, and I think if Beyonce had done all of the things that I still mentioned, I still probably think, well, what would Beyonce do? And I would still do my own thing, because that's what Beyonce would do. But despite whatever you think tonight, I think there's one thing that we can all agree on, and that is that after Lemonade, we all cannot wait for Blue Ivy's all-revealed autobiography 2040. Thank you.